one person to the other. It's this transfer, and I like the fact that Suriotula, you're saying it means to gather knowledge and learn something new. Thank you so much. Andrew from Nigeria, you're very much welcome, joining all the way from the west side of Africa. And just thinking about it now that we are saying that knowledge, I mean, education is knowledge, it's abilities, it's transferring and sharing this, and also with an aim of trying to have a wholesome development of the mind. And of course, there's also something to change with other practices. Do you think there's a relationship between education and road safety? Can education be used to decrease road crashes? We know that we have a target to halve the number of road traffic deaths on our roads by 2030, and this is a global coalition. Do you think education can help decrease that? It's just a yes or a no on that particular question. And of course, what is your experience in education? What has been your experience before in education? I mean, having gone through either, say, primary, secondary levels, O levels, and also tertiary levels, what is your experience? Do you think it can actually help us decrease road traffic crashes? Is it possible, or are we just being too ambitious? Let me see what you think. Thank you so much, Claude. You're saying that you're joining from the UK, United Kingdom. Thank you so much. And you're also saying, of course, 100%. Then Sirotula is saying, yes, it is. There is actually a linkage. It's definitely possible. I think Ravi, you're saying the same thing. Ami, definitely yes. And Andrew, you're saying education means to the discipline that is concerned with, it refers to the discipline that is concerned with methods of teaching and learning in schools or school-like environments as proposed to various non-informal and informal means of socialization. Wow, I like this, Andrew. I mean, this is the point where I always say that there's so much knowledge and so much information among young people, like what we've just seen here. Yes, Kwayemi, Claude, you wanted to say, if you could share more in details. Yes, please, briefly, you can do that. Serotula, learning rules and regulations of road safety and obey decrease road traffic crashes. Yes, when we tell people about the road traffic crashes, these are the rules, then this helps us, of course, getting to know that. So please keep in your conversations and the responses in the chat box as we go through this. But of course, you're saying rules and regulations of road safety. Once taught to young people, once taught to road users, this can help decrease road crashes. And amazing work has been done by one of our own youth members and youth leaders that we have had in this board and in this coalition for quite some time. That is Tiago, and he took his time to just prepare a short message for us just about his work so far in relation to education and policy, and of course linking it up with the road safety. So please, let's hear from Tiago.
Hi everyone, my name is Tiago. I am a young teacher in southern Brazil, and I am one of the co-writers of our Action Agenda for Safe Journeys to School, the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety policy brief on road safety and education, on road safety and the SDG 4. With this policy brief, we did a performance, we performed a review of evidence and of both successful and unsuccessful implemented policy. We bring some key data showing the impact of road safety deaths and injuries on schools and young people's academic life, showing that, for example, 2+ million children miss out on school due to road traffic injuries every year. This document also outlines the fact that if we do not address school access issues such as dangerous roads, there can be no safe way to the future. We know, of course, that education is a way out of poverty, but students need safe school surroundings to get there in the first place. So, for example, one of the data that we outline in the document is the fact that up to 74% of crashes occurred less than 200 meters from school, and most of accidents, up to 90% in some cases, are happening less than 500 meters from school, especially in the most marginalized countries, communities, and in low and middle income countries. So we present some real-life cases of youth-led local actions that are tackling road safety challenges linked to education. One in Indonesia, for example, by Titi Sefrindo and the Transportology team. One in Belgium, led by Linda Masibo and the folks at Hasselt University. And a third one in Rwanda, led by our friend Kumbui Ami and all of the people of the Vision Zero Youth Council there. In the end of the day, of course, the policy brief is targeting decision makers, offering them, suggesting to them key actions that they can take to make school surroundings safer. I would outline some of them, the following. Governments, for example, should set and enforce 30 km per hour or less speed limits in populated areas, prioritizing, of course, school zones, university, and other places where children and youth live, learn, and play. Governments should also provide protective infrastructure for safe walking and cycling in not only those areas but others as well. Civil society organizations, by their part, should raise awareness of the impacts of road traffic injuries on children and youth and advocate also low speed streets with protective infrastructure by design where children and youth live and play. Schools, on their part, should advocate for 30 km per hour or less speed limits in school zones. That's sort of a constant, right? And avoid driving skills based programs and lessons in the schools. Finally, youth and youth led organizations should support all those efforts and act as a role model for the communities in which they are based. I am super confident that with this paper, we can call for an end to the victim blaming culture children and youth have been enduring when it comes to road traffic injuries. We are calling for governments to accept their responsibility. All these changes are an opportunity to answer the 2030 Sustainable Agenda call for us to build and upgrade education facilities that are safe and inclusive, and of course, for us to achieve the global plan of Decade of Action for road safety targets. It's time to take action, and I am super sure that this paper can help us do just that. Thanks, guys.
Wow. I almost said thank you, Tiago, but I remember that it was a video, but I don't know if you also had the same feeling. I felt like he was talking to me as a young person today and just going through what the policy brief is about. And we co-worked with him on this particular policy brief and thinking about it. I don't know, what are some of your takeaways from that video? Really, what can young people do? What can be done in relation to helping reduce road traffic crashes, especially near school zones? What can governments do? And lastly, Tiago said, it's time to take action. What action can a young person take based on those inputs on policy brief? And I like the conversation that is going on in chat. I think one of the things that that is coming out is the fact that we're already seeing a connection between education and interesting, and it shows.
Alex, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if it's just with me or is he cutting in and out a little bit? He is.
Yes, he is.
He is. You there, Alex?
That hear me now?
Yeah, a lot better.
Hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So I was just saying that, I mean, it's been quite powerful hearing the message on what could be done in relation to young people and the policy brief that that Tiago and myself worked on, just trying to, talk to the decision makers and stakeholders and governments on what they could do. And it was quite interesting just to see what you guys have to think about that. And I think, Andrew, you're saying, but in this context, education in road safety is to educate all road users in the proper and safe use of roads in order to change the user, basically, or influence behaviors. I think that's part of what you're talking about. But earlier this year, so sometimes this year, there was actually a very big summit that was going on, and the discussions were around education, but not just education. In our current context, we want to transform education to meet the current needs and the future needs of our generation. And we were lucky enough to have representation from our coalition, and we were represented by none other than Alison. And I know Alison will be more than eager to just to share with us her own experiences there. So maybe Alison, you could briefly introduce yourselves and probably tell us about what is this summit that you attended and what was it about and how does it relate to us? Alison?
Hi, everyone. This is Allison. I'm based in the United States. I'm one of the members of the Youth Leadership Board with the Global Youth Coalition. And thank you, Alex, for the introduction. So, yes, the Transforming Education Summit was held in September at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. And it's centered around SDG 4, education. And so we were joined by youth leaders and government leaders and decision makers from all over the world to talk about transforming education. So that means increasing accessibility and increasing quality and supporting teachers and doing everything we can to work together to push forward a new generation almost of education.
Wow. Thank you so much. I think that is one of the quite a high level summit that you had to represent us. And were you alone, or there was somebody else who was representing the coalition with you?
No, of course I wasn't alone. I was with Tiago, which we heard from a few minutes ago through his amazing video. And honestly, it would not have been so successful if he wasn't there with me, because we were a power duo and trying to advocate for road safety within that context.
Wow, thank you so much. Yes, of course, Tiago and Alison represented us. But then, Alison, what were some of the discussions around tests? I mean, yes, of course, it was our own education and the discussions around transforming education. But what were some of the other main discussions that probably will be relevant to us today as young people championing road safety and also acknowledging that there is a link between education and road safety?
Absolutely. So aside from just not just, but aside from the conversation around improving quality and access and working together to move forward, and part of that also has links to road safety, because we really want to create those connections with different groups and organizations and backgrounds and people. But a lot of the conversation also highlighted the impacts of the COVID pandemic and how that had an impact on our educational systems around the world. And then taking the lessons from those couple of years to really move forward and make sure that we are stronger as societies across the board. And again, as I said earlier, that comes in many different forms, from funding and affordability on the students' end, but making sure that the teachers are also being supported financially. But then, also taking into considerations other huge issues, other SDGs, such as climate change and accessibility issues for people with disabilities and gender inequalities, that all greatly affect school attendance. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that part of SDG 4, one of the sub SDGs within SDG 4 does note road safety. And so while the summit did such a great job at us talking about what education is within the four walls, that section of SDG 4 was ignored. And so Tiago and I were really there to try to push that piece of the global agenda, because it is crucial. It's vital to ensuring that we have a future that we all talk about. We can only get there if people get to school.
Wow. That was quite some really great learnings as well. And the fact that you are actually able to even point out something that global leaders and really big people would actually probably ignore. And sometimes I'm actually shocked that it's not usually that it's ignored. Sometimes it's because nobody is committing to making a follow-up to it. And this is exactly what the power of this coalition is about, that young people can be empowered, young people can actually call leaders to account, to ask for accountability from these leaders. And that's exactly what you guys were able to do. And of course, COVID-19 would not have been ignored in this particular discussion. It came in and really threatened and questioned how we have known education in the past in terms of the infrastructure, the system that have been put in place. And for the first time, most of these things are not possible. But what anything that stood out for you in relation to now, other than the fact that there was a component of the SDG 4 that seemed to be left out, in relation to road safety, anything that probably was discussed there or leaders committed to that you think would be a brilliant takeaway for us today? Yeah.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, unfortunately, the piece on road safety was pretty much omitted from the discussion during the summit. And as you said, that means that the decision makers are missing a very, very important link when it comes to ensuring a quality education, because we can only ensure that quality education once students are in school. But what happens when they are going from point A to point B? And as Tiago mentioned in his message earlier, in a large amount of cases, pedestrian deaths, especially for youth, occur within 500 meters of the school. So we're losing kids on their way trying to get a better education, a better future, and of course, working to try to increase school attendance rates and quality is great, but we can't do that if we're not protecting our students as they're actively trying to do that. And I think the biggest takeaway from all of that was, first of all, the link really needs to be advocated for. It is something that is missing from the global conversation, from the SDGs conversation. And it really just reinforced the amazing advocacy work that we are doing as a coalition. And everyone that's on this call, just for being here today and for joining us and for learning more about this issue. I think just the fact that that portion of the SDG was pretty much ignored and omitted from the conversation just proves the importance of the work that we're trying to do here today.
No, I mean, I wouldn't have agreed better, Alison. One of the things that in my own experience as well, and as you were speaking, I could reflect on, is it's always young people are always seen as troublemakers, as people who are a problem to be dealt with. But here you, Alison, you come in and Tiago comes in and actually says, look, we actually think there's an important piece that is missing, but at the same time, there is a linkage in between. It's not just about education, is not just about what happens in the school compound or within the four walls in the classroom where that is possible. Education is something more than that. And I think that is there's a journey towards education, to school, and there's a journey from school. And this should be looked wholesomely as part of the whole SDG 4 on improving education. That's something that is really, really amazing. And a big takeaway for me that, look, it's about understanding what exists in those documents, understanding what the leaders committed to, and reminding them constantly and taking advantage to just call them to attention and say, this is something that we seem to be missing. And that is super amazing, Alison. I think as we are looking at this, I think one of the things that St. Barclay is saying that students are not safe on our roads because the institution we intend to seek support from are even more corrupt. So there is even discussions around corruption, and this is something that is quite unfortunate, that then other factors other than infrastructure, other than speed limits, other than signage, education, then there are other vices in the society that make it difficult for us to achieve our own agenda. And Ami, you just making reference to the video by Tiago, and you're saying the video really explains the content of the policy brief. Most of the crashes occur near the schools, and if the politicians are take responsibilities by implementing some preventive measures, road crashes can be decreased, and we can achieve the target of this decade by this decade of action by 2030. And that is very true, Ami. I mean, it's a matter of the plans are there, the commitments are there, it's the execution. And for the execution to happen, you and I, just like what Alison and Tiago showed us, we need to find ourselves more where these conversations are going and where are going on, and where these politicians, leaders, governments, and other stakeholders are having these discussions in. So thank you so much. We always say we are young people, and when we work, we also have fun. So what was that one thing that probably was, like, this is the most memorable thing for me, whether it was just generally something you found quite interesting, could have been about the event itself, or it could be something around the summit itself. Anything?
Yeah. So I think the most enjoyable part for me, because again, this is such a professional space, it's very adult centric, and my favorite part, and I'm not just saying this because we're here as youth, I really genuinely mean it, and it was just hearing from youth directly about the amazing work that they're doing to transform education in their communities, and hearing about their projects and all of the innovation and initiatives and campaigns and like the volunteering work, and so much more, and talking about the differences between formal and non-formal education, and how a lot of the world focuses on formal education, but non-formal education really is such an important aspect of life too. Those life skills and anything that could go under the idea of non-formal education, but the energy that youth brought to the table and to this event, honestly was the source of all of my hope for the future. Like seeing how engaged people were and how dedicated like youth advocates were for not only their own mission, but also for just improving quality of lives across the board globally. It was just the energy was my favorite part.
Wow. They always say that young people, that three things exist in somebody's life at any particular time. There is energy, time, and resources. And young people have two of them, energy and time. And every day we are looking for resources or preparing to get resources. But the decision makers, they have the resources, but the energy and the time sometimes doesn't exist. And Alison just proves to us that yes, young people were actually out there with energy, and they were showing how much they're using their time to actually have an impact through volunteerism, through mobilizing the local communities, and also speaking out some of these things. And that was one of the most interesting. I think I would also find that very interesting. What do you guys think? What do you think on your own end as you're listening into this conversation between ourselves here and Alison? So any questions that you might have for Alison, please drop them in the chat box, so that she can also share more of the learnings and some of the other things that are happening. But I think, Alison, just as we're thinking about this, do you think there is anything that is relevant for us that based on the summit, anything that we can take away and probably start implementing at our own local levels? I think one of the approaches we have always had as a coalition is that we value local actions from a high level capacity development that we receive. Anything that you think we can start implementing or that can be of value to our work on a day-to-day basis, as we also await questions from the audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first of all, I'll point out that we do have a policy brief on SDG 4 and road safety. And so Tiago is one of the co-writers. I think you, Alex, are one of the co-writers. I can't believe you haven't mentioned it yet, but I think Stefania linked it in the chat. So if you scroll up, you might be able to find the link to it. But that policy brief really goes through all of the research that has brought us here to this webinar today. But it just goes through so the research, the evidence-based recommendations that we have for decision makers, and those key points to push the agenda forward from a road safety standpoint. And this brief, I think, is very valuable as youth advocates when it comes to opening up that conversation, to really pushing that missing piece of SDG 4. And so not only just generating attention for the linkages between road safety to education, but also to the other major global issues. And road safety tends to get ignored in mainstream media and mainstream culture, but topics such as education and climate change and inequalities and things like that, they don't. They are really highlighted in like mainstream spaces. So really advocating for those linkages, such as through this policy brief, helps push the road safety agenda further by bringing more attention to it. But past that, it also generates involvement for road safety advocacy. So youth may not have a personal attachment or story to road safety specifically, but they might be very passionate about education. They might be really passionate about climate change. They might be really passionate about inequalities. And all of these things are pieces of the puzzle that link together road safety with education and the other major global issues. So this policy brief, provides an opportunity to advocate for the links, and not just passively advocate, but really get energized and as I just mentioned, get more youth into road safety advocacy work, which it's really like the saying where you kill multiple birds with one stone. Road safety is really that link with so many global issues, and advocating for road safety pushes forward the many other agendas that we have on the global scale. And Tiago mentioned this in his video, but a specific example of this amazing work and a great idea for people to advocate for in their local communities would be to advocate for lower speed limits in their school zones. It connects SDG 4 education with road safety very, very easily. It saves lives, and it's better for the environment because if you're going slower, you're burning less gas. So that is a great starting point, I think, for youth to get involved in road safety and education advocacy. But again, that policy brief has so much more. So I really encourage anyone who's so passionate about this topic to check it out.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Alison, for taking your time. And just, I think the major thing that I'm getting from this is advocacy, not just passive advocacy of silently speaking about it, but using the energy and the time and the knowledge that we have and we continue to receive to actually go out there and advocate for road safety. And of course, the policy, the link to the policy brief that was done by the amazing Tiago and Alex is actually has been dropped. And thank you so much, Stephanie, for helping us out with that, and of course just being able to find that. So please copy paste the link and go and read the policy brief later. Don't leave me here. Okay? And listen. So I think, thank you so much. I think there's a question that is coming in, and as I was preparing for that question, you mentioned, Alison, that it's road safety is that one thing that it's like it's like killing two birds with one stone, and it helps address so many other issues and global concerns that we have today. And I just remembered a very funny short story. I was in a wildlife conservancy area, and I was talking to the managers in charge, and there was something we were arguing about, and I told them, no, it would be very easy. It's like killing two birds with one stone. And they told me the next time I use that statement in a wildlife conservancy area, they will arrest me. But thank God we're talking about road safety because I'll be killing birds. So there's a question for you. I think I'll start with the question from the Providence. I will actually ask yours later on. You asked, I think, Soriotula, you're asking, what is the difference between formal education and non-formal education? I think, Alison, do you want to shed some light on that? Thank you.
Absolutely, and that's a great question. So formal education is pretty much defined by what happens within the four walls of the school system. So in a school, you have the subjects, you have English and math or any language and sciences and history and all of that. That's formal education. And non-formal education is a huge umbrella of things, and that includes being a part of like a sports team, or even if it's not a team, being active in a sport. That's a form of non-formal education, because you're learning life skills such as teamwork, and dedication to something through sports, or volunteer work. That's not considered formal education because it doesn't happen within those four walls, but it really is a part of education. It teaches about empathy and, again, dedication and hard work and things like that. Advocacy work, those soft skills of communication is key, and creating networks with people, networking with, to create those professional connections. There are so many parts that formal education doesn't encompass that non-formal education does. So that's a really good question, because it doesn't get talked about a lot, but it's so important.
And it's like it's not a question of either or. Is that these are things, both of them should be there and accessible for a young person, and that's really thank you so much, Alison, on the same. That was really well tackled. I think Ami is saying, I mean, you've had experiences meeting with these decision makers from different countries. Some of them are state ministers and cabinet secretaries in the ministries of education. Do you think they have a plan of including road safety in school curriculums where they're not there? Was this discussion, did it come up by any chance, curriculum and road safety, especially for developing countries? Do you think that came up, or do you think they have plans for that? No? Yes?
Definitely. So that is a really good question, because it's something Tiago and I talked about a lot when we were physically at the summit. But I think the answer to that is really a spectrum. It varies based on minister and government. And when we were having conversations with different ministers, there were some who were really interested about the issue, who were talking to us about the fact that they were already doing road safety education within the formal education system, so within the school curriculum in the school walls. But then there were other ministers who, when we brought up the topic of road safety and then the link between road safety education, that was the only thing that including road safety within the school curriculum was the only thing that they were putting together from what we were trying to tell them. So they were pretty much ignoring everything else that we were telling them, like what happens right outside the school zones, like within the 500 meters of your school, is really important, but all they were focused on was the school curriculum. So I think there's a balance between what it means to have road safety in educational spaces. And, again, some ministers were really forthcoming and really interested in, if they didn't already have road safety included in the formal school curriculum, then to include it. But then also it brings the part of, some people were only focused on that and not actually doing the work that comes to actually saving lives. So there's a you win some, you lose some, and but it was all very interesting.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Alison, as well. Again, I think they seemed to have played the same card that we say you focus on your sphere of influence, where you have influence. So if the ministers of education, they would talk about inside the school and the curriculum, and they will avoid what happens there, because some of them will start thinking, no, that's in another ministry. The roads are the transport sector and all of that. And I think that is, but it's good that those discussions were there, and it's a green light for this. And lastly, the beautiful question from Providence, and he says, Alison, do you feel like we were hard at the summit? If there was a way to measure it, I know it's not simple, but do you feel like they had us?
Oh, difficult question. So I do think youth were heard 100% because again, I mentioned the energy. It was very hard to ignore the energy that youth brought during the summit. At the same time, I'm always a little skeptical about um, decision makers when it comes to youth involvement because meaningful youth engagement is difficult. It's we are advocating for that, and it's not implemented at at the really meaningful youth participation level that it should be. So even though youth were there in attendance and presenting, and um, the people in attendance, the ministers and the decision makers were there to talk about an issue that affects youth the most. Um, I don't know what's going to happen afterwards. Like I don't know if it was just like a yes, we hear you to try to like push us out of the way and then keep going, or
Yeah.
if they were really taking it in fully.
Yeah.
And as road safety advocates, Tiago and I were quite literally running after ministers in the hallway, like,
Yeah.
talk to us, please. Like we were quite literally running after them in the hallway. It was a sight to see.
Yeah.
But and again, that the responses to that was it varied. Some ministers were really happy to talk to us and really wanted to know more, and were genuinely interested in trying
Mhm.
to implement some changes in their countries. But then some
Mhm.
other were just nodding, and then they were like, okay, great, thank you, bye, and just like turned around and left. So yeah, Providence is very right. I don't know how to
Mhm.
measure it, and I don't know how to properly answer the question because it's a
Yeah.
really good question, but also really difficult to answer.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna stick with the hopeful answer that yes, I think we were heard.
Yeah.
And but we can't just like rest on our laurels and say that yes, we were heard and that's all we have to do. We have to keep fighting and keep advocating
Mhm.
for these issues. So I'm not saying yes as like a phew, we're good, our work is done. No, our work is not done. Keep advocating,
Yeah. Yeah.
keep pushing for change.
No, yeah, I think that's super amazing. I mean, you're basically saying our objective at the summit was met. They had us, but we are not so sure what's going to happen after that. And I think I have an answer. Young people need to keep advocating and make follow-up and seek those commitments that they made out there. The things that they were told by you and Tiago in the hallways as you were trying to make them listen to you. Actually, realize as you were saying you were running after them in the hallways. I think that's the part that you enjoy the most now. I've actually gotten my answer to the other question. I think there's also a really interesting comment from Yusuf. He's saying lobbying research institutions and universities to consider road safety research as important as other fields. Research will attract funding and wide range of high impact research in the field. And of course, data, evidence. And I know this is something that's part of what we don't have so much, especially in the developing countries. And yes, I think, thank you so much, Alison, for being able to just virtually take us to the summit. And I know it's also another moment for you to relive the experiences at the summit. And we hope that, of course, we were heard. You did an amazing job just getting them to listen to us. And I know the next thing is up to us now to make follow-ups with our own ministers who were present at that summit, and being able to just get to know what else was happening in that place. So again, this is the discussion about education, and this is a discussion about road safety. And at the same time, we are looking at whether there is any linkage between education and road safety. And I'm amazed by the beautiful contributions that I'm getting from this particular group of global champions. And you are saying there's a clear linkage. If the answer is yes or no, yes, there is a clear linkage between education and road safety. But I think with the panelists, Alison is actually telling us in the same breath, there is a big role to be played by those in decision-making spaces, and there's a big role to be played by young people. And that where they meet is advocacy, where they meet is action, and where they meet is pushing on. And thank you so much, Imani Mangowi, you're saying you really like this meeting. As a leader of road safety from Tanzania, you're happy to be here. And of course, this is the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety. And if you know somebody who is not yet a member of this coalition, tell them they're missing out so much. Young people are already taken over the world and they're changing it and they're bringing the numbers.
I think we lost Alex again, didn't we?
Yeah.
We lost him. So before we might get him back soon. Let's wait. I'm gonna send you guys the link to the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety if you want people to register. And yeah, should we continue while we wait for Alex? All right. So someone raised their hand. Let's take this time to acknowledge some of the people. Who is it who raised their hand? I don't see it now.
Hi, I was just wondering
Hello.
if that information. Hi, how are you? I was
Hello.
just wondering if the following information could be sent by email. It'd be much appreciated.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you registered, we're gonna send a thank you email. So you're gonna be able to get that. You're gonna get a recording of this session. You're gonna get our policy brief, and you just sit still, and then it'll come to you.
No problem. One question I did have, and a point actually, because I know there was a question that was asked about how do we believe that road safety could be part of education. My input I would like to suggest and share, of course, is I think it is so vital that we have, like, you know, information about road safety, no different like SDGs. It's equally important to achieve the goals that we are able to make the next generation and the current generation safe, especially when it comes to the speeding and the amount of safe that could be in road safety. So it's so important that we do make bold actions, but also call for our leaders to acknowledge this important topic. Thank you very much.
Exactly. That's like a really good point. You know, you can just feel the passion from it, and the fact that we, you know, as young people, we're here, we're living the realities that Allison and Thiago were talking about with the ministers, right? We've seen it, we live it every day. And you know, someone working with yours, it just feels really good that we're having really good representation when it comes to pushing this agenda forward. And I'm really glad that Allison and Thiago were there to speak about it with us. And so I wanted to also ask Allison, maybe you have like some final words, since we're about to run out of time anyway. Any final words that you want to share with our audiences?
Oh, that's I wish I had prepared something.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, that's fine. I mean, like I said earlier, the work isn't over. It's far from being over. And whether like you're really, I mean, you're here, so obviously you care about road safety, but whether you want to talk more about education or climate change or inequalities or access or you know, anything from A to Z, there is a space for you within road safety advocacy work, and we need you. We need your voices because, you know, there's a lot of us in the Global Youth Coalition. There's a lot of us around the world that are advocating for change. But first of all, the more the merrier. And second of all, even though there are a lot of us, we can't do all of the work. And the more hands that we have, the better and the faster and the more energy, you know, the work that we're trying to push for, that snowball is going to grow faster as people come together. And one of the SDGs talks about coming together for change. It's the last SDG. It's about creating those connections within organizations and within issues. And this is an amazing way to do it, getting involved with the road safety, with the Global Youth Coalition for Road Safety, and getting involved by reading the policy brief and trying to think about projects to do within your local community. There's so many opportunities to create change in your community. And like I said earlier, keep pushing because the work is far from being over.
Exactly. I just like to touch a bit on what Allison said. You know, it's just really, really important that we all come together for this cause, because we know based on what we've heard about SDG 4 is that it wasn't even on the table how road safety was connected. It didn't even cross anyone's minds how the issue of safe spaces for children greatly influences their ability to get quality education. And if that's not shocking enough, I don't know what is. You know, sometimes we focus on whatever's there at face value without really looking at what happens behind the scenes. And that's where road safety comes in. I'd like to highlight what Allison said about road safety is kind of a one-up on a lot of the SDGs. It's kind of something that will hit a lot of the targets. If we address one thing, it'll create a domino effect that addresses others. You know, and this is a really good sign. I'm just really happy that all of you, all 38, there's 42 before, but all 38 of you are here. And that means you're interested. That means you see that education and road safety come hand in hand, or you want to learn more about it. And that's already great enough, you know? So thank you guys for being here. And I'd just like to see if my colleague, Miss Sanaka Sauna, is here to give closing remarks, and then we can take a picture, and then we'll prepare the emails for you guys. Sana, are you here?
I can go if Sana can't for the
Go
closing
on,
remarks.
Bella. Go on.
Yeah.
So I'll introduce her as our very fantastic advocacy director, Stefania Miniti, who is coming from Italy. Oh, and thanks, Allison. Thanks so much for sharing everything. It's amazing hearing it from you. I mean, we've seen the pictures, right, guys? You follow our emails. It was really good, the work Allison and Tiago did. And can we just do a like this for Allison? It's like a little applause for her for representing us so well, and Tiago, who isn't here. Thanks, Allison. You're awesome.
Thank you so
And
much,
now-
Mao, and thank
Go
you
on.
to, also to Titis and Ami, our SDG champions that are just organizing the webinar. And thank you so much for Tiago, Alison, Alex for being the moderator in the panels. And our last call to action, guys, is just to download the policy brief and to use it to just make any local advocacy action with your decision makers at local level. And then we can share all your good achievements on advocacy at next year global events, as experienced from Alison and Tiago, right? So just to explain to you that now we have several tools in our page claiming our space. We have the policy brief on quality education, but also on gender equality. And coming next month, we will have another on climate action and road safety. So these tools are available for you for doing local advocacy, and please be in touch with us if you need any support. Use the tools, and just as Alison said, just keep claiming your space and participate in the policy making process with your brilliant ideas and passion. So thank you so much to everybody to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Stefania. And now one last task. We're a little bit behind 1 minute. We can still do this, guys. Turn on your cameras because we're going to take a picture and it's going to be part of documentation. I'm going to give you guys like 10 seconds to turn on your cameras. Otherwise, I'm going to edit you in Photoshop with some bizarre. Okay, good. I'm seeing cameras open. Brilliant, brilliant. All right. And then you just need to stay still. Great. I'm seeing so many beautiful faces, you guys. You're all so cool. All right. In 3, 2, 1, first picture. All right, stay still, stay still. There's still another page. Stay still. In 3, 2, 1. Awesome, awesome, you guys. You all look great, fantastic. Thanks so much. Yes, just 2 minutes late. And thank you so much, guys, for coming. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Steph. Thank you, myself. Thank you, everyone. And it's really nice seeing you. We'll send you the email soon, yeah? Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, Mao. Thanks,
Thank you,
Sana.
ma'am.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.